plan does not predict crisis, does not predict a black swan, but the better your plan, the better you can react to a unpredicted event. Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about solving big problems and making an impact. And folks, if you hear a thumping in this episode, they're making an impact on my roof. That's what's going on.
I thought they were fixing the big problem from the impact of the hail.
Yeah, well, impacting to impact. Different kinds of impact.
That's that perpetual problem we talk about.
Yep. And, it's the way that you do things. And also, folks, you might notice that there ain't nobody with us. So we decided today that we hadn't recorded a family episode in a while. So
yes, sir.
What better way to do that than with some heavy equipment, background noise, and people jumping up and down on the roof. Unique.
Perfect. That's totally fair. You're distracted today. We recorded yesterday, last episode. I was distracted as hell with Clementina, and we were both distracted with the thunder from our guest there. But it was a great episode. So that's all right.
Yeah. The background noise is background noise. That's how you know it's real. And you know what's real.
I gotta ask: Does the AI know how to do background noise? Is that how we know we got it right?
Yeah, maybe.
There's your test. Look at the hands and check for background noise.
I thought you were meaning how to filter it when we get ready to publish the show. I'd be willing.
That's probably the right question.
I bet there is a tool. Oh man, he's got pallets. Now I need to go and grab his pallets.
There you go. Got some fun projects for you with those.
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas, but in those ideas, one of the things that I found over the years that's so interesting is the leaders or people that quote thrive in crisis. Now, I always find it the more I walk this path, the more I find it interesting how somebody says, I thrive in crisis. And, I don't think they thrive in crisis. I think what they do is they set themselves up for it and they wait. Now let's define crisis. Crisis is I'm running late and I got to get a whole bunch of shit done before I can leave. Mm-hmm. That's a crisis. Got to catch a flight. Another crisis is an unplanned, unforeseen thing. On the extreme is the black swan crisis. Now, folks, you ain't heard of the black swan event. Go read the book. I've got it on the shelf behind me.
Don't watch the movie. Completely different.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, yeah, that's about ballerinas.
Yeah, something like that.
But a black swan event is, and the reason the metaphor works is because it's not some unheard of, like 1 in 10 gazillion probability that it'll happen. It's more like 1 in 2 million or something like that. It's a high, not or a inverse of high probability of occurrence, low probability of occurrence, very, very low probability of occurrence, but there's still an actual probability. Like, you could say the flooding that happened in North Carolina a couple of years ago on, due to a hurricane in Florida that came up from the Gulf and rode across the inland waterways, caused a black swan event for those folks. Yeah. That was, I guess that's maybe 1,000-year flood. So that's what a black swan event really is. And meaning it's so unlikely to occur that you wouldn't have it on the score sheet of things that might occur. COVID, the
Yeah.
coronavirus, is truthfully that first period in March of 2020 was a black swan event.
Yeah.
People weren't prepared for that, and it was way out of the norm. So I think when you start talking, that to me is the extreme of the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The other
I think
one,
you're I
go
think you're
ahead.
right, though, that there's also this like artificial crisis. I think a lot of people do. Frankly, I do it. And I think that's the procrastination in me of the hey, this you can't write this paper the night before back in school. It's like, well, watch me, I will, and I'll probably get an A on it because I'm that good. And it's that weird thing where you're thriving in this under those constraints, but then for some reason in that case, and I think this is true for a lot of folks, I could definitely say it is for myself, but especially in that procrastination context, it's that you have trouble in the open space just as much as you thrive in that very closed space. And I think there's something really interesting to that kind of dichotomy. I think when we start talking crisis and thriving in chaos and all those kind of things, got to think of what we talk about with the Green Berets and your training there. What do you think? And this is actually, I'm going to throw it right to the conclusion statement because it's probably what we're going to say at the end of the show. But what do you think is the key then to thriving inside of that crisis and being able to handle those very tough situations, those terrible constraints, all those kind of things?
Well, it's the plan. I mean, 100%. It's always the plan. The plan does not predict crisis, does not predict a black swan. But the better your plan, the better you can react to a unpredicted event. One of the things that we did as part of our planning for pretty much every operation, even training, was risk analysis. And you go through, and risk analysis starts with assumptions, and assumptions are those things that you have to have occur in order for the operation to go forward. And there's a whole list of things. And, the sun rising is an assumption, but that's not a necessary assumption to put into the plan because it's a fact, right?
Yeah, smart ass assumption.
Yeah, that's a smart ass assumption. But the way that you do your risk analysis is after you've identified the assumptions. Well, then you start with those assumptions and say, well, what if this assumption turns out to be false? It's no longer a true assumption. So what do we do? And then in the risk analysis, what you're doing is you're adding in, you're analyzing, okay, what if that doesn't happen? Or what if that does happen just as bad? And you're analyzing the probability of occurrence along with the effect of occurrence. So a great example that took me a while to accept when I was doing Homeland Security is the probability of occurrence of a improvised nuclear device being detonated inside the U.S. continental borders. Well, the probability of occurrence was pretty low, but the effect of occurrence was so high that it required us to plan for it. And that's the way, when you start thinking about a plan, that's the way you get in front of the crises that can happen. Is you look at these things and go, okay, well, what happens if that happens? Okay, so if that happens, we're going to do X, Y, Z. That's contingency planning. So
Yeah, and I think that's huge for being able to be prepared for the crisis. I want to zoom in a little more to the crisis itself, because this is why I was kind of joking. Like, I know you're going to give the answer, because folks, spoiler alert, the answer is you'll be able to lead in the day-to-day, in the calm, just as much as you'll be able to lead in the crisis. And also, how do you be more effective inside of the crisis? Well, you got to prepare during the calm and all those kind of things. But I want to zoom in a little bit to the crisis itself. Not necessarily, I think it's true for the artificial crisis we were talking about, as well as these black swan events, all these different things. What do you think are some of those main skills that help somebody to be effective in that? Because you could go through the full planning process and someone's still going to lay on the ground and cry at the end of the day. There's still a personality to it. There's a skill set to it. What do you think that comes down to?
When you have the plan, you've thought about things and you understand what's the outcome. And when something goes awry, and it creates a crisis, you know that, well, I still want to do this. I still need to do this. So how do I handle the thing that stopped me from going down the path? And I think that's, I keep going back to, well, it's the plan. Well, yeah, because the plan,
What's
in
the
order to
skill
make
that
it,
lets you stick to the plan? I guess is a better way to put it.
yeah, well, what it is you're not necessarily, because a crisis denotes that, well, my plan's no longer functional as written. Well,
Mm-hmm.
because I have a plan, I have a baseline to adjust on. And the other thing that a plan gives you in this crisis mode is the familiarity with the problem set. Because in order to build a plan, I got to think about what's the outcome, what's our plan to get there, how are we doing this, and what about this. So I am much more familiar with the processes and procedures and the assets I have, so that when I do have a crisis and I'm shifting from, hey, I've got this awesome plan, to I need to react now,
Mm-hmm.
well, I have a broader knowledge of what's going on around me, the environment,
Yeah.
the outcome, the planned procedures, the assets available, all those things. I've taken that time to prepare, so that when a crisis does happen and I need to pivot, shift, redirect, then I know much more easily what is required to do that.
Yeah, the plan gives you that new set of constraints that you can create, and you understand. Like, even as I'm thinking, it's like, what are the skills there that help you thrive in chaos and crisis? One of the things that comes to mind is the ability to rush into action. And then the other side of that coin is the ability to pause for that second, because that's where you lose a lot of people in those crises, is when people go into panic mode and they can't pause, they can't even think. And then also when people, so you either pause too long and you get frozen, or B, you start taking action, you don't take the time to think about it properly at all, right? And I think that is one of those key skills. And even I take it to the next level. It's being able to take action and think. As silly as that sounds, it's a little bit like chewing gum and walking, which that's a little dangerous. But no, the being able to think about what your steps should be while you are working on your first set of solutions. Like, I think the best way to put it, and I would actually love to hear the way y'all put this into proper Army language and your acronyms and all that. But basically, I would say it's the ability to take immediate action for a Band-Aid solution while working on the surgery, while working on the long-lasting solution. I'm thinking of, I was texting you last night about the dust storm that hit us. It's that time of year in Tucson, right? And I'm running out to tie down a tarp that got blown off in our garden, right? So rips off, it's flying around. I don't want that to happen. All those kind of things, rip board, all that kind of stuff, right? So I go out and grab it, go on, just grab, hold, so it's not getting worse, and look around and go, okay, what can I do? And go, okay, this thing is torn to shit, frankly. Dad, I'll send you a picture of that corner. It's torn so bad. So I was like, all right, well, I can't use that anymore. Run to the shed, go in there. I'll grab a piece of rope, tie on another part. Boom, easy. Go in the shed, there's no rope. Well, it's real easy to go then at that point, hey, I'm taking action, I'm moving forward. What's the other thing? Find a chain, go out there and start tying it, right? There's all sorts of other things that go wrong throughout that situation. But because I'm moving forward the whole time, you're able to keep assessing and keep making progress with it. Whereas I think you can just as easily either A, get frozen, or B, wind up standing out there holding the freaking tarp the whole time and go, well, I don't want it to blow away. I don't want things to get worse. And you wind up with to take your pace example, jumping to the emergency of like, I just have to hold this thing. That's all we can do. It's like, no. We got contingencies all the way through that. Well, how do you take that and apply that idea of like taking action assessing as you're moving and implementing those little pauses that are so key without getting frozen by the crisis.
I think it's really recognizing the crisis and recognizing uh, what happens next, and really what it comes down to is there's always a pause. Sometimes the pause is a couple of days, sometimes it is a blink of an eye, but that in that pause is when you assess the initial action. You know, the example that pops into my head is ranger school, and you're on patrol, and the ranger instructor, the RI, decides that you're not moving fast enough. So, or the right direction, or maybe things are going too well for you. And he decides he's going to throw a monkey wrench in the gears. And I was just going to pause, folks. Y'all know what a monkey wrench is? A pipe wrench, slang term from olden days, like your two pawpaw time frame. And you drop it in the engine block, and it messes up the gears in the engine block. Bad thing. That's what happens. And so what the RI does, he throws an artillery simulator that makes sounds like artillery incoming round. And what you do is your reaction, your pause is as soon as you realize what that is, the action you take, because you've practiced it and it's a standard operating procedure, is you go a cardinal direction for a set distance that's sometimes 300 yards, 500 meters, whatever, uh, to get out of the immediate danger area. And this is old school stuff. This isn't modern Ukraine stuff. Uh, so that is a contingency standard operating procedure that's developed through years of understanding and knowledge when something like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really, the pause, the whether or not to just jump into action, but there's always a pause. What type of action comes from the experience feedback loop? The other one that pops into my mind in that same sort of sense, back to ranger school, is you're caught in an ambush. Well, they taught us to, in ranger school, in a school based on Vietnam era stuff, is what we were operating on. Is if you're in an ambush, then you turn, put your weapon on full auto, and run into the ambush. So attacking the problem in that sense.
Right.
Never had to do that for real, so thankfully. But really, what it is the more experienced you are, because you've gone through this and you're sharing and you're developing SOPs, you're developing contingency plans. It's back to the business world, it's the continuity of operations.
Mm-hmm.
What's my backup? I mean, folks, if you ain't backing up your data now, you're a fool. And if you're not storing it on something that is off site from your house, your office, in some form or fashion, you're accepting a high risk of losing all your information in a broken pipe, a flood, a fire, a idiot flipping the wrong circuit breaker. So I'm just thinking in that sense, the continuity of operations is something every business should think about in there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that goes back to, it's like we talk about a lot, like having the end in mind, understanding the why behind things. It's the same kind of thing in rugby when you talk about how you react out in an open field. I can't tell you everything's going to happen out there, but I can give you a set of criteria on which you can make that decision when the time comes. Then, of course, you practice the decision just like you're talking about there. So that in that crisis, a very different crisis than you're talking about an ambush, but in that crisis, you are able to make those decisions. I'm curious. I want to try with this. I don't know how possible it's going to be, but I want to try to drill into a situation where you don't have any sort of plan. where there's not necessarily this set it. You don't understand these contingencies. You don't have all of that. You are in full on chaos. You are not prepared, right? In that kind of a situation, what are the skills that can help somebody get out of it? I think at a core level, and I don't know if this is one of those. I'm sure it's learned to an extent. I'm sure it's also a little bit of nature and nurture. There's something genetic there maybe, but the ability to stay somewhat calm during that situation, I think, is one thing that comes to mind. The ability to persevere in the situation and recognize that if you take action, you can create a better outcome for yourself inside of that chaos. I think. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other pieces there that come into that skill set, or that I don't know. Skill set doesn't even sound right for some of those. It almost sounds like more like a natural aptitude towards these type of things. But of course, you could still develop it as a skill. But what
Well,
do
it
you think
depends on
else?
what do you define confidence? Is confidence a skill?
I think so, because you
Then
you
it's
can
a
build it.
skill.
There you go. So I guess if you can build it, it's a skill. There you go. That's what I learned today. Spoiler alert for later. But no, I think that's the interesting piece to me is like, what are these, more intangible type things aside from the plan that allow people to thrive in chaos? You can think of all sorts of terrible things. Look at Hurricane Katrina is the first one that came to mind. I don't know why. I was barely alive when that happened. I don't remember anything about it, except for the levees breaking. I know that's a big thing. And I've watched documentaries and all that. But you look at these different things. And there's a song about it. It's a great,
Not
very good
about
song.
those levees, but there is a song
No, it's
about
different
levees.
levy. I knew that song probably before I knew much about Hurricane Katrina. But anyway, you look at any of these crazy, chaotic situations, and there's always people that seem to just like rise up out of it and take care of those around them, save lives, and those kind of things. A lot of the time they don't have training. Like there's the first responders and those kind of things, but every now and then you get that like 15-year-old kid who just happened to save a family of 5 somehow, or these random things like that. What do you think makes those people so different? What is that skill they have, that natural aptitude they have that allows them to thrive in that chaotic environment?
I think it's a belief in themselves, that kind of a twofold belief. One, that the situation will get better, that belief. And then the other belief is I can help. Those two are foundational in really any kind of leading through any kind of crisis. I'm just kind of was reviewing Medal of Honor citations. And when you read the Medal of Honor citation, what that individual did in order to be awarded that Medal of Honor is they believed that they could do something to make the situation better. And that's the same thing, whether it's the 10-year-old kid who calls 911 because his brother got hurt or mom is sick or whatever. They have a fundamental belief that they can help and
It's
make the
the
situation better.
Yeah, I was gonna say it goes back to probably the internal locus of control. That might be the difference, the internal versus external. Which, folks, I couldn't tell you what episode that is. We did a whole deep dive on that a while back. But yeah, if you feel like you are in control of things and things come back to you, then you are going to be the one who's going to take action. Because if you don't, then no one will. Whereas if you have that external locus of control, things happening to you, you're more liable to sit there and let the storm come in or those kind of things. Because what can I do against that? Now, I want to
Well, you
shift
could take.
gears.
I'd be
Yeah, go
curious
ahead.
on the analysis, especially a young person, like a 10-year-old. What other things in life had set that up? Because if that 10-year-old had been told every day for his entire life that he sucks and he's a piece of shit, then he could never have that belief to go do something beyond what he should be able to do to help rectify a crisis situation. The same thing for a Medal of Honor winner.
Well, I
Uh,
think that's a common thing for people in for people who excel at these really high pressure situations, those kind of things. I think it is common that there is something. I think it is possible to build that on a strong foundation, but I think a lot of people have that on a pretty crappy foundation that they've been patching together over the years to that. Because somebody did tell me I was a piece of shit my whole life, and I decided that I was going to not be, and that they were wrong, and all those kind of things. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. You know, when you're in those high pressure environments, those high stress, you have, you know, crappy upbringing, stressful work, whatever it is, whether, you know, you're choosing it yourself, like you triple volunteer crazy guys with the Green Berets or whatever, or it's something that's just happening to you just through your circumstances. Those high pressure situations, those high stress situations increase your stress tolerance to a level. And I think that's the really interesting piece here. As we're going through these different skills that help you out in crisis, it is that stress tolerance. I think is just one of the fundamental things that I think we reference, but we never directly said. And I think the important thing with that, talking about whether it's a natural aptitude or a skill, who cares? The point is that you can train that, you can plan for it, you can build on those things. But then also, I think there's people that just have that, you know, somewhat naturally based on, you know, their own upbringing. And I think there's an interesting piece I was reading about this the other day around the basically around like high performers and like substance abuse. And the idea of it's like, well, yeah, if you take somebody who is this crazy high performer and did all these things, you know, spent years as a Green Beret, and then you go throw them into an office, they're going to go stir crazy because they're so wound up and they're so built for the chaotic environment. Now, I think that kind of leads us into the second piece of this, which is the calm, the day to day. You referenced earlier already that like the planning is so important, and that all takes place during the day to day. We already kind of talked about that, so I want to stay more in the skill side of things. So we talked about like the flexibility, understanding the end goal, understanding the why, that internal locus of control, all those different pieces there. How well do you feel like those translate into the calm? I could say definitely that high stress tolerance probably doesn't translate very well because I don't know exactly how that works, but if you're stressed, if your ceiling's up here, your floor is probably higher too, which is why people have those kind of problems. So that probably doesn't translate well, but most of these skills still pretty applicable on the other side, wouldn't you say?
yeah, I think so, and I think that's what that goes back to the confidence piece. Uh, you know, if you're confident in crisis, you should be confident in calm and creating uh, solutions to foreseeing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the contingency planning. You know, the thing that I think I've found interesting in my human study is the people that really create their own crisis and say that they work better under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and really, they don't. Nobody works better under pressure because pressure, when you're under pressure, your options become limited.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, you get into depending on the situation, but some form of it is what exists, a form of fight or flight.
Yeah, desperation.
And, and that's what that crisis moment happens. And, you know, I flash into the, oh man, we're running late. Are we going to make our flight? And what happens when you're doing that? Well, you forget shit.
Yeah,
Uh, you know, because you kick the can down the road, you didn't prepare, you don't have the bag 90% packed, you don't have things lined up by the door, whatever those things are. Because I think the missing the flight thing is one of the big things that we all can relate to, and it's it's an undue uh, crisis. You know, yeah. Again, you can still have a thing happen, an accident on the
yeah.
highway
You
when
could, yeah.
you've
Blizzard
already,
hits, whatever. Yeah,
yeah, where you've already planned for, you know, an extra 15 minutes of traffic, but then something happens like that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, then because I've prepared, I've got an extra buffer in time because that's one thing that always for most people creates
mm-hmm.
crisis situations because they procrastinate, don't prepare, don't, you know, let me get 15 more minutes of sleep, let me
I
do this
think
one last
I,
thing.
Yeah, I just want to say I think there's a key point here that I don't think we hit, which is also that there's plenty of people who procrastinate not under the illusion that they are good under crisis. I think there's different types of folks. I think there's people who find that in situation just because it's that in definition of insanity. They just keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. I think it's a little different when you talk about somebody who has the self-awareness of it's like, no, I do kind of thrive when there's a little bit more pressure on me. And what I wanted to kind of ask about or kind of shift into was the artificial constraints on that, because I think that's a really interesting thing. Because you're right, there is a negative to that. If you are somebody like I was saying, I generally, if I was going to put myself in a bucket, I fall in that procrastinator bucket, better under crisis, feel that type of thing, right? If you give me too much time, I'm going to waste it and then get everything done in 2 hours, right? That being said, you're right. There are mistakes. You do make mistakes when you go through that kind of a process. So what I think is interesting, I've tried to do this in my own life, is creating a system to where you have artificial crises followed by calm. And then you are able to push yourself on this of like, I have to get this done by 5 o'clock. And nobody's calling me at 5 o'clock, make sure this thing is done. But I'm pushing myself, get it done. And then I could stop, review it the next day. It's not even due till next week. All of those kind of things, right? It's this artificial crisis, artificial deadlines. What do you think of kind of making that system? I think I still see some downsides to it, but I think it's one of those, like, if you're aware of yourself that you are better in that crisis. Because I do think, going back to that stress tolerance, I think some people, like I said, myself included, do tend to do a little bit better in that than they do in the calm. That whole idea of like creating that system to fit you in that calm. What do you think of that?
Well, you're lying to yourself, because really all you're doing in creating this artificial crisis is saying, I'm just going to take these last 2 hours and focus on this thing to make sure I get it done. Instead of time management and allowing yourself to come up with a better solution. Because the closer you get to a deadline, whether it's self-imposed or external imposed, is there's only one answer. There's only one path. I don't have time to analyze and reflect on it and possibly come up with better solutions. We can tell ourselves, well, I always perform in the last 2 hours the best. Do you? Okay. That's because you stop messing around with all the other bullshit, all the other windows on your computer, all the other phone calls and apps, and you said, oh, I got to get this done. You're lying to yourself. 100%. It's a lie to yourself that this is the only way I can get it done. Okay, well, that's a method, but that's not the only way you can get it done, because if you can do it in one space in your life, you can do it in another space in your life. If you can take the time to plan out a fitness routine to be able to run a marathon and got a training plan to guide you to run a marathon, well, you can't wait until 2 hours before the marathon and knock that out. That's the same thing when you're doing the artificial imposing in that sense. It's a technique, maybe not the best, to get the best outcome. Right?
If you're rushing, I think you're right. I do think there's another layer to that, though, because I think that as you're going through those, it's just, to me, it's really not that different than time blocking or anything like that. I have an hour to get this done. And you create those constraints for yourself to operate in. I think there's a layer there where you are setting yourself up with that. And, I think the difference is maybe how much you build it up into a crisis. I think would maybe be a key difference between these
the difference.
Two pieces.
Right. Yeah. Because I could say on Sunday afternoon when I'm planning out my week that I'm going to take an hour on Wednesday morning from 9 to 10, and I'm going to do this thing. And then at 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, I do that thing. That's much different than, oh shit, this is due at 5 o'clock. I got to get it done. I've got it's 4 o'clock now. I've got 1 hour to get it done. Much different.
Yeah, and I think that is the difference. Actually, when we talk about I think to me that's the difference of like actual like procrastination versus like almost like a strategic procrastination, time blocking, weird hodgepodge there. Because I do think there's advantages to that. If you feel yourself operating there, then the question is, what are those downsides to it, like you said, and then mitigating those. Hey, I might make some mistakes. Okay, cool. I can do this to myself. I got to make sure I got time to edit this paper tomorrow or edit this email or whatever it is, right? Then you can also add in the stress levels and those kind of things.
Well,
I think
and
that is another
also,
big piece
what
also.
what's it take? How long does it take to get it done? There, there's another reality
See,
thing.
can I tell you on the procrastination thing? That's part of why I do it, is because we think things take way freaking longer than they do. And I think that's part of the reason I wind up like this, truthfully, is because I can look at something and go, I need 2 hours to do this. I can knock that out in 20 minutes. And for whatever reason, it always is bigger. It's one of those planning fallacy things. And I do think there's a lot of truth to that as well when it comes to those that procrastination there.
But then, are you learning from the process, or you continue to lie to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean is, if on Sunday afternoon I think it takes me 2 hours to do it, and I allocate 2 hours, okay, that's why did I say it takes me 2 hours? Well, based on my experience in doing these, blah 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 blah. Or if I go and look at my watch and go, oh shit, it's Wednesday. That report is due at 5 o'clock. I need to get it done, and I can knock it out in 45 minutes. Then the next time you do that report or that proposal or whatever it may be, then you should only plan 45
Yeah.
minutes. Or maybe you give yourself a 15-minute traffic buffer. But then, again, it's back to, lying to yourself, telling yourself the truth. I mean, who are you fooling? And, it's what we've talked about before. You have to lead yourself before you can lead others. And if you're trying to fool yourself into this, I need this much time, or I don't, or I kick it down the road until it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. Thank you very much, Mr. Fred Smith. God rest your soul. It is one of those things quit lying to yourself. I mean, I'll call it like it is. I mean,
Yeah, I think so.
I
think
ain't no angel. Hell, I do it to myself too. I mean, I'm not here
the
casting stones in a glass house. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah. Oh, I was gonna say that's the Marcus Aurelius. The easiest and deadliest thing you can do is lie to yourself. And I think as long as you're collecting that data and paying attention and challenging those assumptions, I think is that key. I work better under crisis. Okay, do you really? And it's like, what kind of crisis? And all these kind of things. Keep challenging those different layers of assumption rather than trying to operate inside the same headspace and expecting things to change or expecting good results and those kind of pieces there. The last piece, I wanted to throw one more question at you, which is what do you think is the key to, you talked about the preparation and the planning side. It really sounds like the biggest key is just the discipline inside of the calm. Would you say that, like, as much as the internal locus of control, flexibility, and ability to take action is what matters in the crisis? Do you think that if we kind of summarize the calm side of it, is it really just discipline?
Yeah, because when you have self-discipline, you have that back to that confidence. I believe that the action I take will be the best action I can take in the moment. I have to take that action with the information that I have received up to the moment I take that action. Now that's that, you've heard me talk about the trust triad and trusting yourself. That's the one of the key, well, there's only three. That is one of the legs of the triad, right? Is trust yourself. You trust yourself, trust your team trusts you. And that is that calm. And the more you trust yourself, the calmer you are, and the less A or B option you have, the fight or flight option you have in a crisis, that provides you more options, I think is the better way of saying that. Is because I'm calm. When I'm calm, I can scan, analyze, understand, and even do in my head the risk assessment and what are the second and third order effects very rapidly, because I am confident enough to do that.
Yeah, perfect.
So, and learning I think it's one thing I thought of just a second ago too is I think the the belief that some people have that they do better in crisis, the dopamine hit that they get out of it. It's like, panic, panic. Oh man. Oh, I get to, well, I mean, okay.
Little adrenaline junkie.
Yeah. You could say that, but the true adrenaline junkie, you think about the guy who free soloed El Capitan, doesn't get much more of an adrenaline junkie than that. Do you think he was in crisis mode doing that freaking route? I don't think so. So I think from what I learned, it all comes back to the self discipline of the problem, and being true to yourself, not falsifying to yourself that you've performed better in crisis. Okay, that's a joke. You can't perform better in crisis, because in a crisis you eliminate options. So, Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, I think for me, I thought it was interesting talking about the artificial crises and like time blocking. I thought that comparison is really interesting. And yeah, I don't know, there's the different layers of it, of, like recognizing your own behaviors without lying to yourself, and trying to create a system that you really work well in without creating one that you're accidentally shooting yourself in the foot every time by creating crises. And also, the other thing I just keep thinking is that we need to have somebody who understands more brain chemistry on for this conversation. Because I just keep thinking about the stress levels things and that. Because I feel like there's a puzzle piece that we're missing, that we're kind of talking about, but neither of us understand enough different brain chemicals to really point the finger at. Because I do think there's something interesting to the, like, I have trouble sitting still in the calm, therefore the crisis is more comfortable. There's something weird psychological there that, frankly, I don't fully understand. So we need to have somebody back and do a deep dive on that, because I think that's an interesting piece that really connects the two different things we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, and it all boils back to, or boils down to, comes back to leadership, leading yourself so that you can lead others better. And we here at Tribe and Purpose, that's what we're focused on, is creating a legacy of great leaders. And if you want to become a great leader, then go to 10xyourteam.net and schedule a call with us. Sign up for our Green Beret Leadership Program, because you'll learn the insights and tools and skills necessary to lead yourself, how to build a team, how to lead a team, how to solve a problem, how to identify the problem, define the problem, put a plan together to solve the problem, and then how to lead your team through the execution of solving that problem. And folks, everything's a problem. So you need to know how to lead people through leading yourself. Yep. And that's 10xyourteam.net. Camden, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And run us out, Cam.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass it on to other lifelong learners in your tribe, so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, that full archive of episodes is available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.